the trip of a star-crossed summer, in the sadness of my disconnection, I ran adrift in the city of exterior light. I jumped off a merry-go-round of transience and disappeared in the streets, saying, "Now let the good times roll." I had lingered in the guidelines long enough, and so without a destination I set out, not intending to turn back very soon. Saying to myself, "The sun is born at midnight," I made the best of this idiot pilgrimage, sleeping in the way stations of flight. In wide arcs of wandering through the city, I saw to either side of what is seen and noticed treasures where it was thought there were none. I passed through a more fluid city. I broke up the imprint of all familiar places, shutting my eyes to the boredom of modern contours. There were canals where streets had been, and powerfully reflected light obliterated whole ranks of unsuitable buildings. Asceticism was my dream. Disillusionment demanded no less. I floated downstream with indifference. My one idea was to stay outside until everything but the indestructible had been destroyed. Astray in the void of connectedness, I left behind past and predictable worlds and span on a new axis, out of sight. And so I came to the place called Pancross, and the plain of good luck, where the workers with golden hands are building the cathedral of the Sun-Child, beside the river on the high cone of land, above the flashing downward race of the fleet. This is the cathedral of the translucent foundations, the 8 silver doors and rafters of sunlight, the alchemical house of the first breath of creation. In the multicolored shadows of this perfect structure, I found the people of the golden skin bathing where 8-sided medicine wheels turn through green foam. Here in a vision, I saw the man-angel water snake, dipping his head and tail in a font of sunlight, safeguarding the cathedral with his magnificent wingspan. Here I stayed bathing in the sunlight myself, until my understanding went beneath the surface, and I was shown the plan of the song Vale Royal, a song to throw light on the great secret of London, and the stance of the child in the tree of life, the royal winged son of the liberation. A song to explain the golden quatrain and the mystical geography of King's Cross, a song for all navigators of the night sea crossing. Come, a direction into zones of darkness, a passage to the spaces of discovery begins. We shall make a voyage to the deep place called Vale Royal. The mirror and crescent of a jet-black night now crosses the unclouded zenith of understanding. We shall study maps of parallel worlds. A silver ray flashes in the sky of mind. A spiral train of thought turns backwards. We burn the lamp of memory to retrace, to penetrate and know the darkness of time. Ghostly travelers move on shafts of light, hallucinated exactly on dead horizons. We illuminate an existence of other centuries. We experience the outbreak of metaphysical wars between the Sun-Child and the spirit of Typhon. Look, an old man is wandering at night beside a river through ruins of Trovant. See, there is a child the old man tries to destroy. It is dark down here. The light is bad. It is London in the olden days. Take care. But nothing here is real without belief. A red and blue twilight. The sun goes sinking with resignation over St. John's Wood, turning his face away from what he has seen. Look, Already the long ridge of Pentonville throws most of Whitechapel into shadow. It is another country over the range. Somewhere out there, in a dark trench of stone, in the red and green debris of an old street market, a thin child racks infected blood from his lungs, while other children, dim shapes in rags, scoop up orange peel and blackened stumps of dead matter, casting everything at random into a tattered sack. An Aquarian moon rises over Limehouse, pale though nearly full, as if unwilling to light this stevedore down to the Shadwell taverns, where he intends to drink his docker's wage. The moon would offer him her silver milk, but he never looks up from his overshadowed road. Now a summer wind, charged with smoke and grime, drifts through this maze of brick and stone, carrying sometimes a trace of the aromatic east. Above a silent quay, on the Silvertown waterfront, a bale of cinnamon hangs in the night air, suspended until tomorrow in a void of transshipment. Nothing seems to move in this motionless nighttime limbo of midsummer. Gates of return stand open to our vision of transference. Listen, a drunken shout rings out across the river, followed by a splash, and the stern light of a tea clipper down in the East India pools is suddenly extinguished. And so we pass across and leave behind the docklands where generations of day workers break their backs, working with spice and ballast in the holds of the Indiamen, where coal heavers spit lung blood below the decks, sweating in the worm-eaten vessels beneath the gangers, who weigh each grain of coal dust against the sun. The West End revolves around a long, slow twilight. Compromised by regular street lamps, night erases nothing too suddenly. In from the suburbs, closely guarded coaches filter through Mayfair, big wheels sailing, bringing magnificent passengers to the theatre door. Virginia cigars are like solid gold at the moment. There is restlessness in the Americas. The house lights go down. Between high-chimneyed Bloomsbury and the sloping squares of Camden Town, there lies a great margin of many hundred acres. It is a lost world of meadows gone to seed, of run-down farms and wild orchards, the woodland earth of foxes and paradise of hawks. Here are strange ruins, brick fields and burning grounds. The thorn-apple sways white trumpets in the summer. Herb Mercury stands in the shade of old walls. This whole region is circled widely at night. The living go over its borders to a country far beyond. Travellers lose their way on vague lanes. Thickets of willow stand along the Fleet River or shroud the unexpected pond. Great assemblies of mysterious elm gesticulate under the stars. These are dim lairs of the highwayman. See, he waits with a flintlock, loaded and primed, the wild beast of these suburban woods. And there are cutthroats in the neglected cemetery, men whose eyes feed on the sparks as they sharpen a rusty knife on the side of a tomb. And in these nights, so ghostly and remote, the long-time derelict church of old St. Pancras draws the outlaw to it by the magnet of shadows. Among strange companies and congregations with fires that wink in the old tower after midnight, the dead souls drink and make merry in the mouth of the crypt. Listen, Bad John cracks a joke while baking potatoes in the ashes of thigh bones and shoulder blades, a fuel from the lone coach of last Michaelmas Eve. Now someone falls on the night pedestrian unexpectedly, racing downhill from the ancient doorway, wildfire striking with iron blows, easily opening a victim's skull, destroying a life. And the cloud of the Eidolon rises from the known world, and the death planes flicker ahead. A peddler, hurrying down the Camden Road, will tell us more of this enigmatic region, this place of sudden trouble for night travellers. We are strangers in this city. Old man, tell us, from your knowledge of tracks and back lanes, how the road lies directly to Gospel Oak. You keep on the Camden Road to Chalk Farm, or you follow the Caledonian Road under Highgate. No one goes north of the Euston Road after dusk. A light wind blows these warnings away. There have been more frightening limbos where time itself is cast aside, and we are drawn to this sinister rectangle of darkness, flanked by houses and lighted streets, this broken-down oasis in a desert of stone. What is the explanation of the void here at the city's axis of east and west? Are there legends arising from this lost world? Are there perhaps great secrets guarded behind the tall black poplars beneath the fields, down here in the Valley of the Fleet, at Battle Bridge? If you talk to the old folk who know this district backwards, in taverns and by firesides, you will hear it said, the place lies too close to the supernatural worlds, enchanted and therefore abandoned. One man, half mad in the Kentish town workhouse, claims to have seen the red and fiery ghost of a Catholic woman burnt at St. Pancras in the days of good Queen Bess. Long ago, an idiot creature from Shoreditch is said to have seen fire-crowned apparitions of the child martyr Pancras moving in a glory through transfigured cornfields and backwoods. Someone else, lost on a system of footpaths, was possibly confronted by old Mother Redcap, the long-departed witch of Camden, who made him walk the meadows until dawn. He went home barefoot, but twice the man in his bones. We will remain in the age of reason, and fathom these rumours if we can. They will surely prove to be shallow tales, stories circulated by simple men. But they may prove otherwise. This broken-down wall, running under the trees, marks the outer limit of the graveyard. There is a glimpse of an old square tower a quarter-mile on, too distant to name. A night bird flies from a ledge, dark glider, slipping away across the evening air. What business has a child to be racing his shadow in the moonlight, swerving among the graves as though they were objects in a playground? Perhaps he is a farm boy, the motionless tombstones, his 100 sheep on the green field of Zion. Perhaps he is a fearless pickpocket, paying homage to the god of thieves, dancing for Mercury in the delirious aftermath of crime, hiding a golden timepiece in a cracking tomb. Away off to the right, a watchdog suddenly howls, and the echo comes back faintly from the Pentonville Heights. The dancer in moonlight looks back over his shoulder. He is a boy of 7 or 8 summers. His large eyes are set far apart, and they hold you with their incandescence. Today he has seen a blue and silver wood dove glide behind the vague corner of a rainbow, hanging like a flag in spray. As the sun passed through the dusty noon on this midsummer's day of independence, he was bathing in cool water down at Willem's Pond. Early in the morning he escaped from the smoky metropolis. Out here he has seen empty meadows, African savannas, blue gulfs burning in the great haze of June. He has sailed with sun-tanned buccaneros, chasing the Spaniard over the Mexique Bay. And now in late twilight, the 7 years' war long forgotten, he has come to circle the haunted church, Child William, without his more cautious playmates. A grail night advancing on the chapel perilous. Crossing the fleet, he pauses to listen to the night music of the River of Wales, but there are voices under the black water. They talk in the sinuous whirlpools, say he should never have come here after dark, with cold, glittering laughter say he is lost. A silver image armoured in the rays of the moon, he mounts the incline to the ancient steeple house. Here is a fairy hill from the highlands of Ossian. Here is a silence drawn from the centuries' well. There are derelict vaults like great ships run aground and canted over with broken hulls. He is afraid. The mist comes seeping eerily out of a tomb, like the trail of a spirit drifting back into life, seeping out from a ruptured mouth of marble. His eyes are locked on the horror of the open stone. Why does he want to stretch his hand into the darkness? Down on the riverbank somewhere, dry sound cracks, and he spins reluctantly, half kneeling, dark eyes vast with terror as half-light moves. Someone is returning from the tombs. A tall shape moves on the hidden side of the river. Someone strides on the wooden arch of the bridge. Already it is Satan, who leans on the rising ground and mounts with a flying step towards the tower. See, as an owl floats smoothly out of a wood, crying the hunting song of the noon of night, the stranger stands over the moonlit graveyard and motions with an intricate gesture, one hand whirling. The child comes forward, sleepwalking in the silver light. An hour ago, the master of grand rank and doctor of antiquarian miracles, the arch-flamen Kindernax, left his cottage and his rose trees in Kentish town and set out to the south-east, taking his way on a course through dim fields to Old St. Pancras. He avoided Camden High Street, crossed Camden Road, hastening over the dusky highway unseen, and struck into the wilderness below Camden Square. He knew the tract he was dealing with, and he himself was known in these latitudes, uneasily saluted by lost souls of the underworld. No one here would trouble the late night walking Pendragon. A packet of maps, a restoration snuff-box, or the ring flashing red on a lean ring finger might have been plundered from the old fool 20 times over, but secretly the hard men crossed themselves at sight of him. For them he has become a superstition. From Devil's Acre up to Hampstead Heath, this doctor of the night walk is mentioned among felons. Some say he has calculated a great-grandfather to have been the son-in-law of Boadicea, and they say this explains why he rambles perpetually down through the wastelands beside the fleet, crossing and recrossing the dangerous cemetery, moving among the brick kilns in the dark meadows. Inexplicable temples smoking in the moonlight. The robber of graves, night fishing for rib cages and skulls, has seen the old man searching for the dust of his line, ranging here and there through the silver acres. And time has engendered another idea. Some say the doctor is searching to unearth an ancient treasure, but has lost his mind in the long way to locate it. The drifter, who often sleeps in the bell loft, has seen him measuring and digging by the river bend. At one time the old man was followed and watched, so that if his treasure should suddenly come to light, there would then be somebody close at hand to help the rotten caskets out of the ground. The long quest of old Dr. Nightwalk is smiled upon by the illiterate marauder, his fascination secretly tinged with fear. But others watch from a secret elevation. Across a checkered pavement they shadow this man and trace him through the dark with tricks of light. The swan has been waiting all day for the sound of thunder. Sweet flag and willow on the arid bank are impatient for the waters of the Fleet to rise. A summer storm has broken over London. Eastward rain drives over the counting houses of the Minories and soaks into the rookeries of Saffron Hill. The arch-flamen and the Child of Seven take shelter. Above them the weather-beaten Norman Tower is ready for the winds of 1764. In the prime of life, with 700 years behind, there is experience in these rain-scarred stones, each block a living cell responsible to the whole edifice. There is strength and flexibility from rafters down to foundations. The wind plunges over from the Islington Ridge, scooping the old man's words out of the doorway, flying them, syllables missing, over the night. They blow away into the fields round Pancras-side. Is the little boy lost in a trance of the old man's kindling, driven by one whirling hand to the city of willows, sent where the golden blade lays down the grain, the human seed which grows on the great earth plain? The dragon roads drive through the royal vale, magnetic mysteries of straight track and green lane flicker. The soul of a child of 7 can find these highways, and this child has seen a tree full of angels. He is different. How quickly his dark eyes have disappeared upwards. Something whispers in the back of the old man's brain. The act will raise his standing in the Star Court of Memphis. He will read the book of the 7 high places, and the child of the London Madonna in the underworld will guard the temple gate out here in the brick fields and dust heaps of the city, which reach out their hand and threaten the ancient sites with smoke and extinction. Rain angles in from the south, bending reeds on the mudflat, where 5 blind cygnets are exchanging a concave matrix for realms of unlimited plumage. Like a white explosion, they see the verge of a different kingdom. Tonight a new eon begins in the darkness. The child speaks against thunder. Listen. Oh, there were tall people with bodies like rainbows, moving in the fields the other day, walking among the haymakers near Willen's farm. He saw them moving on a road of sunlight, circles of blue and red fire spinning in their bodies. In his London accent he talks about his angels. The eyes of the old man glitter as the boy pipes on, and a blue javelin of electricity is hurled through the battlefield of the clouds. Is it the sun-child of the blood royal? A black sky rumbles from horizon to horizon. The high winds collide in the wake of the lightning, and the heavens split open again as the thunder rolls back. But the old man hears only the racing drum of his pulse and the voice which tells him to cut down the lamb in the shadows, to use the sharp stone which is loose in the western wall, and tear the body to shreds and send it down the Fleet. Now in the height of the storm, when the blood is hot, it will save the great earthworks beside the river bend. It will save the old tower of Constantine the Great. The ancient house of the British kings will stand, and the great star temple of the royal solar child will rise as the red lodge over the water. This is now promised and sealed in flames. A foul wind from underground howls in the flesh. It is a bad dream and a long madness. A storm blows through the hidden city of willows. The sun is 2 hours under the horizon. See, the rain levels in against the white tombs as though it would wash all inscriptions away before dawn. The fleet has risen in her northern reaches. 60 foot wide she runs over Camden town, flooding the hovels in backstreets that wind on her banks. The swans have taken their cygnets to higher ground. The old man who looks for the secrets of the sealed book of London stands in the shadows with the child from Golden Square. They watch the lightning play through the mountains of Moriah, and the landmarks burn with their ancient brilliance. Water flows in the wilderness of Beersheba. The old man sees dragon roads driving through the earth, but the child sees bright travellers flying on down the straight tracks to Avalon, towards the city of St. John. The sacrament of a broken promise to the storm god, the sun child surrendered in the dark house of chrome, reveals the hidden city of the royal Vale. The lightning tears through the night's black raiment, leaving all her mysteries naked, illuminating the stonework of the philosophical doorway. Spirals and chevrons, living and existent, move on the outer shafts, while a blank central pillar rises into pyramids of spinning androgynous godhead. The tower of the oldest foundation points at the zenith, and shining ranks of the sky race hover in flashes of turquoise over the ruined altar. The lightning conducts the mad symphony of the storm wind, bringing in long rolls of thunder from the western heavens. The deep music booms in the northern heights of the city. The high winds hammer in the tops of the elms, but the storm is in the strong hands of the Holy One. The angels are walking the 40 footsteps field. A golden circle glitters on the old man's hand. The seal of the British broad arrow flashes and burns, the fiery arrow of the Trinity in flight across the eons. As a shaft of lightning lays an avenue of brilliance from the North Star into the square constellation of the Gemini, the golden circle slides from the Mount of Saturn, and the ring is transferred. The 4 sky quarters revolve, the dead sun of Egypt goes down, and the Amun-Ra rises. Child Mercury is guiding the moonboat in underground rivers. The royal lord of the Axis pilots the sunship that sails in great circles from the first to the last, coming from the golden canals of the city above the city. A black sky burns in long electric traces which track the solar arc in a wake of flames. Look, against the bright splitting of the firmament, a child with 3 wheels of fire curved round his head moves like a dancer towards the skyline. See, the sun above the sun rises in the age of fixed air. It is another country, and the fields of Helena, the fields of the flowers of light, where all things are 8. A river full of golden fish leaps through this landscape. There are pools and star temples, rapids and temple woods. The people of the Transformation have named this place the Garden of the 8 Forward Pathways. Once again, the London Madonna moves among the people. The woman in white has returned from Jerusalem, bringing the brightest fruit of the axle tree. She, the white maid of the river of wells, closes the book of plurality and chooses instead to read from the book of one word. The blue stars listen. She teaches her child to know who he is. The golden coin of the sun rolls out of the dawn, and the face on the disk of heaven is his own. The riches of grace turn the mirrors to gold. The people of the transformation dance forward. And above the octagonal city of the summerland, above the cloud-like domes and royal palms, the firebird, radiantly balanced in the wind, descends in a double circle from the new meridian. Seven long years spiral into the stellar void, leaving a hazy blue trail of light around the blazing axis of the sun. Time races, the unwinding days turn back, and the sunship goes on to the cadence of the second cycle, but the city reasserts her mundane sublunar position. Her lost sons and castaways swarm like flies across the altar of her narcotic fascination. Newborn children see light in the frameways of doors. London, false to the tower of the first foundation, whores with her great sons of commerce, groans for brass coinage, never dreaming of the miracle of her 8 directions. And now in this late September and anticlimax, our players, who are only shadows, are moving in their cycles and their seasons. The wide-eyed child dancer in the moonlight, the sun-child and future phoenix of revelation, stands at his first noon of 14 under triangles of fire. He lives with inner voices on Golden Square. He flies in his night body over Primrose Hill. But the lodge Pendragon lies in the traitor's place, a dead man under the midnight quadrant, a great distance from the physical cities, far from the lesser sunlight. And now the second solar hero leaps over the horizon of the song Vale Royal. He is the young blood rebel son of David, who died in the roofs of the poor Holborn houses and was buried at the crossroads of the suicide. Selah, O king, live forever in the city above the city. Down here, though his name is on everyone's lips, and Londoners buy a cheap pocket handkerchief stamped with a fair impression of his final eyrie, all down the autumn street markets, still no one can decipher his mysterious existence or translate the magical language of his life. Let us look around this wilderness of buildings before returning to his western birthplace, from where we shall track his early setting star. Because of a dead child's body rotting on a trash heap, and a hard destination, a too young exit to death, he is the holy child martyr of this time. Late summer in the 7th decade. Darkness, the city is clothed in smoke. Ashes rain through the night in hot, dense air. The wind is a black wall drifting in the daytime. It is after the feast of the 7 chimneys. The great vents and stacks on the halls of Eblis trail avenues of smoke across the sky. Fire winds blow from the parapets of the Red Lodge and rake the royal vale with oblique storms. The people are in shock, suffering the deep separation. But in the Red House they blow on the fire trumpets, with the flesh still hanging in shreds from the hollow bone. The days of the Subterranean man are over. The ashes of the sun, the ashes of the moon, bury the iron floors of the furnace of Beltane. The red-headed one, the royal-winged sun, sleeps on the burning ground in the smoke of immolation. The incense of his flesh billows up into the steeples. The Grand Master Architects and Knights of the Inverted Star generate the rumour that a madness of diseased pride and not a 40 days fast in demonic atmospheres drove him to suicide 3 days from his ghostly descent through the main chamber of the furnace in the Vale of Hinnom. They cover their tracks and try to control his legend. But the ashes of the royal winged sun diffuse and scatter on night winds through the city. Distorted whispers catch fire and blow themselves out. The House of Black Wing, the Church of the Firstborn, constructed in subplanes of the inflexible negation, will be ground to dust for this in the end times. So be it. Who can forget? His body lies here, a harbour where the fire ships have sailed, a wreck of their destruction in this high room. The hot winds blow across the rooftops. Let them talk of opium and arsenic. They were the rose and thorn of his farewell. O see, he transits the shining bridges through red and blue skies to the omega of dream cities, rapidly accelerating onwards. But still we know his body of contraction is 6 foot under the dust, and his deathbed is under 4 highways in the royal vale. How else can a self-destroyer be laid to rest? A stake in the left side and a crossroads pit are good enough for the golden avatars when they leave the dark side of the earth. Down from the bright superior oceans and sailing through the delta of shadows, where are the skies of pre-existence? He is the son of a widow woman living in a western city of the apple-bearing islands. But where are the Isles of the Blessed? Look. They school him with grim letters, command him to grind out little symbols from a colourless second-hand primer. But His Excellency the half-asleep schoolmaster certainly cannot perfectly utter the ancient vibration of syllables. He runs up a sullen flag of rebellion, dreams a song of the right-handed waning moon. They send him home. He is irreversibly backward. In Bristol City, by the high dragon spire of St. Mary, he climbs a winding stairway under a cloud, the 5-year-old renegade in a black mood. But an angel with a trumpet of sunlight shows him some multicoloured letters in a dustbin and says, "You can learn with these." The angel tempts him, blowing his name across the Atlantic to America like a storm, and so he learns the alphabet in style, with bread and water and the books of Paracelsus. He vanishes into the attic at the age of 6. He dislikes the red brick world around him. The rim of night wheels up from the east, crushing the daylight under darkness. He studies Trithemius, dreaming over his triangles. But who stands behind him, in the shadow of his lamp? Who is this tall one with the shaven head? His lucid will has created a virtual image, like the sun-child taken by a stranger from Tintagel at night-time in a winding of gold through a narrow gate to Merlin's 1,000 glens of Caledonia. He returns in his 7th year with a hooded pilot, crossing to phantom landscapes of earlier days. He remembers another life in Gothic England. His lute is inlaid with the sun and the constellations. He sits on the bank of the river Avon. The mill-wheel turns with the metre of his roundelay. He is a medieval poet-priest, a cosmological poet, in love with the first month of time, the month of May. He sings of the 4 bodiless heavenly creatures. Under the dragon spire of St. Mary Redcliffe, through winter evenings he half remembers and writes in a tall Gothic script. Here is a love song for the high Saxon lady who stands in the castle turret looking out at sunset. What colour is the sun reflected in her green eyes? He looks into his black-letter Bible, where ranks of the old script stand in Exodus. See, he corrects his hand from the yellow page. His parchments have been cut away from the tail end of land deeds, nonsensical documents gathering dust, worm-eaten in his dead father's lumber room. Now he vaguely remembers a name and places a signature under his rhymes, which scan in an ancient style. Asleep on bare timber in the summer months, he dreams in the dead hours of a Sunday morning and floats from his attic window in moonlight, rising up by the dragon spire of St. Mary. He hangs above the chimney stacks and treads the silver air towards the stars. But a great cloud slides across the heavens like a lid and blocks his way with darkness. Through whirling shadows, he falls from his star pavement, wakes in the dust. But see him, 8 years old in transtemporal flight, working on the Battle of Hastings in the top of the house. Duke Harold swears on the jewel of St. Pancratius. 500 years ago he wrote this poem. But to people who clatter through his delicate moods, how can he rationalize anything? Now his sister stares at his treasure from the attic. She can't understand the old letters with ornate curves. She loses interest in the rubbish of her little brother. The idiot neighbours tattle on Redcliffe Hill. A widowed mother and an 8-year-old recluse. What a moonstruck child! She should seize him, the misfit, show him the whip, bend him to everything else. The air is too heavy, the elect of 15, they are filling the air with ashes. See the smoke from the feast of the 7 chimneys. His head is shaved. The lice are not encouraged to suck the wisdom from the heads of the charity boys. Here is the classroom of the Blue Coat Hospital. The harsh music of coercion squeaks from the blackboard, accompanied by the schoolmaster's dry cough. The lucid dreamer has lost his way in the low countries under the moon. They bend him to a neutral image. Symmetrical music orbits and winds around the sun-bathed spire of St. Mary. The red dragon drinks from an organ fugue. Down here he sits, behind dusty windows, dreams of the other side of the river, the summer pastures beyond the Avon. A galloping ball of black and white, the magpie comes hopping through the willows. Catkins sail like Viking ships downstream. In fine-smelling nettle beds, ladybirds are swarming. Wood doves slowly circle the hollow tree, clapping their wings in sensual flight. He is frustrated behind the dusty glass. Red tirades of anger surge in his brain. Money-mad priests and Bristol functionaries sink in lakes of acid, disappear beneath black seas of obloquy, tides of rage. They perish in bizarre poems, but the dead waters of spite and derision cannot cleanse him with their obvious shallows, coasts of hysteria and poison reefs. Always he rides the mysterious undercurrent, a night sea crossing to other times. He secretly blazes in medieval wordcraft. Far from the dignified limping of Dryden and the flat indoor world of Pope he celebrates the saddle roads and river meadows of England. Far from the mercantile atmosphere of Bristol, he celebrates the old monastic centuries, touched with the wild spirit of the fortune wheel. Like a sun priest he celebrates the open air. For the equinox of the great year comes again, and he is a wave of light on the dead coast of winter. 11 years old, Thomas the Rhymer. He carries the sun and moon in his hands. He stands in the sacred hill of himself. 3 years vanish. He follows the clouds up through the high summer of his lightning span. Phaeton in the sky roads, headlong rider. Escaping from grey maxims of life below, he drives hard with the horses of the sun, his attic the chariot, his lash the hand of fate. In his dream body travelling through kingdoms of medieval England, he lives through the wars of the roses in a trance state. He casts his eye over neighbouring decades, the 100 Years' War, the Lay of the Black Prince. Look, there are 7 epic poems in a dead language. From the dark core of another lifetime, in the tongue of a distant century, he ignites in 60,000 ancient lines. Scylla. An 8-spoked wheel and a winged sphere, he is the legend of transmigrations returning, his destiny at first misunderstood. The incline tips more steeply, the wheels are slipping out of the meridian. At 15 he is bound over, goodbye to the blue coat boys. The earth smokes as he gazes on it, the mechanical world is below the burning flank. He is sold for 7 years to a Bristol scrivener. He eats with the servants and shares a bed with the pot boy. But see, as the long-winded jargon of human justice drags from his pen and the absolute ticks from the mantelpiece, underneath the precedents, here are the fanfares of Godwin. But his master rushes in, a wild beast from the tap house, and finds young Thomas Scatterbrain scribbling trash. The poem flies into the flames in a hell made of timber. The Baal fires flare for a girl child of Israel. See, the Saxon chorus to liberty burns so brightly. 13 devils dance on the ironwork, trample the song's black ashes into the grate, kick the sparks from the chimney into the night. A wreck may lie ruined on the sands of Minehead, 100 years with the inshore rain, but he will rot with the turning of 12-month 7. It is the ocean or the idle haven, with a Gothic signature at their stern, like the high rudder of old ships. He spreads his parchment poems before the wind. 7 keels with tracks of foam cross waves like strings, reflected stars, green Vega in the lyre. O Bristol city, built upon the middle passage, your tainted wharves have received a treasure fleet sailing from the Isles of the Blessed. Such jewels from the remote world. They pass from hand to hand among your more erudite citizens. They definitely glisten with a supernatural light. He lies. The poems came out of a clergyman's junk room, a secret room in the top of St. Mary's spire, a place to which his fathers held the key. There are forests. You see the curve of the land reflected in the tops of the trees. Sometimes there are walled cities and wooden towns. Night falls. You see the plague demon and lycanthrope standing in the shadows of the gargoyles. There are wars. Black Death takes red cities in circles of doom, and men lay siege to their desires. With engines of carnage flaming, they hurl the language of strife. And there are distant glades where lovers dance, from dusk to dawn the snake dance of the heart, the moonlit greenwood full of burning joys. From ashes the days of the Plantagenets arise, in the visions of an English master singer, a second sun to stand in Chaucer's morning. How many more of these mirror-like romances are there? He is vague and elusive. He likes the baffled faces. The ox is an animal unlike the unicorn. He supplies vocabularies for pocket money. He keeps his secret. This is the only way. He must lay before the world his hidden rivers. But someone is chanting the descent to Gehenna. The men of the craft read from the Book of Coils. The school of night and elect of 9 overlook him. The dragon hills of the west country shudder and crack as he crosses into the courtyard of misfortune. The tors and ridgeways burn with adverse fire. The watchtowers of the necropolis flash out as he crosses the stagnant moat of the castle of Otranto. Someone smiles at the instigation of coincidence. Over-intoxicated with the first upward catapulting of himself, his transcripts are racing in the royal mails to London. The Lay of the Black Prince is read by 3 men on the level. It is a construction of miraculous antique poetry, but the mean standing of the poor Bristol boy is a joke. He must not approach their circle as men of letters. They keep a manuscript. This is a tactile connection, and a letter goes west to put the proud clerk in his place. The incantations of the hierarchy focus through the triangle. A shock drives through the red cliff of St. Mary. The great spire trembles, and something invisible climbs through the twilight clouds like a ghostly spider. The bad thought strikes him from the letter. In London, they say the work is forgery. They spell it out coldly. Splinters of their black and white conclusions fly from the page. The Saxon princess throws herself from the tower. The cities and forests burn up in anger. Solar oceans of fire and catastrophe rise. He has transferred great treasure from one life to another, but the emeralds have been ground to a little green dust and kicked away on the wind from my reward. The antiquaries of Bristol have their backs to the wall. They say no Londoners will undermine their western genius. With fat hairy thumbs they block the low-flying slander. Can a charity boy write like William of Stratford? The men of the red brick city are set aslant him, but they still pay a precious shilling for glossaries and notes. Others move slowly to the London side of the question. They splutter in their tankards and backbite from bitterness, trying to forget a wild dance through the Middle Ages. Now he bleeds, and he cannot float on the innocent water that used to sustain his palaces. The resonance of a distant age dies away. A grid of iron crashes from the sky and locks him out from the royal court of yore. Ghost dances of medieval Germany fade. Down along the docks, he spends a day by the clippers. He dreams of the wind down the Orient sea lanes. Will he go as a cabin boy to the tropics? Florida has a siren's name, but he is thinking more of the Fortunate Islands than the slave states where the white man owns the sun. The road to London opens before him in the night, the adventure of the golden pavements. He will move more freely in the air of the distant town. With all the lunatic cracks and frowns of Prince Hamlet, he turns half of Bristol City upside down, play-acting madness, roaming about in small hours. He kneels in a rectangle of sunlight by his attic window. Scandalous valedictions to various young ladies lie alongside his suicide note for the scrivener. Now he will take the future by storm. It is written. The hieroglyphs are within the circle of power. It is time to turn the sun backwards on the London road. A snow-drifting night. He waves down from his seat on the open luggage rack. The snowflakes melt in the half-revolutions of the iron wheels, uncrushed. His mother and sister stand very still in the blizzard. They lose his dancing white in the pale screen. The English mail coach winds on the dark Avon road. London, a Medusa, outstretched on the river bank, her thick black tresses snaking out of a million chimneys. Where is the finite horizon of this city? He lives in the dim suburb of Shoreditch. There is no counterpart to the spire of St. Mary rising up through the rainy smoke. The roads to Plantagenet England go under the ocean as far as the lost land of Lyonesse, country under wave. His distant relations cannot penetrate his silence or his answers. They understand nothing. A demon of 17, he works by night in a second cousin's bedroom, but when does he sleep? Or does he sleep at all? As the slow boat of the moon goes sailing westward over the city on the far side of midnight, like a drowning man who would overtake her, spinning his arms in the vague foam of life, he tries to follow in the ivory wake of her crescent pointing down to the gardens of Fand. He works in a shaft of silver rays, trying to fuse cold Augustan language with the multicolored diction of the olden days. But he needs a master key to other millennia, to turn nights back on themselves, to spin around quickly mechanical years, the long rims and orbits of change, to work and free the locks of time again. Dawn is an island of the dead without solitude. The cousin regards him with terror in the first light. Each and every morning, oblong and triangular scraps of manuscript on the floor tell the story of an insufficient spark. The furnaces roar under Pentonville. They blaze, earth fires by day, earth fires by night. Dread heat. A black stream crackles under Shoreditch, stagnant track. He is an Egyptian hawk in the willow month. Down from the green tops of lyrical mountains, he dives in a long spiral. First of observers. In the wind labyrinths of early May, he goes hunting. His verse satires hang like vultures of conscience in hot skies above the rottenness of the Tories. Caught up in the political dust storms of London, sometimes he detours the city in great circles. Drifting west on the barriers of noon, into the paradise of the wasteland he plunges. The fleet river sings of her pure genealogy, her ancient sources in the 7 springs of Kenwood. Africa beckons him, a green oasis, far from the heavy mirage of the city. Look, the mirror appears in his hand. Underground rivers burst out into sunlight, with jets of gold and fluid curves. What is their hidden meaning? He stands on the border of the future Xanadu. Unseen countries are reflected in the river, with the coast of Atlantis rising. Histories flare up. Race suicide through the loss of innocence. Iron laws to replace the music of the Sea Isles. Look, the titanic invasions of Arcadia, an anti-god tall as the Atlas Mountains, grand master of military hosts from distant suns, turns the dragon force against the earth. There are dances of spectacular genocide, and after the wars, as the red kite wheels in the bleeding paradise, the Virgin sings. Her mood of disorientation reflects the sickness of Edens, the earth tilted over, and the first time of saber-tooth hunting. But a clear memory opens a pathway through the forest. The war god is lord of the garden. The brilliant country still bows at his altars. The awesome black candles burn, but the doomed lovers at the silver precipice, the cataract of their transfiguration, still laugh at death on the pool of blue water and transcend themselves in a vast electric climax of spray and blood and garlands of ether, far from the dark cloud music in the house of chrome. Child martyrs of the African summerland, they would not serve the war god in the house of thunder, or lend the force of the single state to shadows. Cloud pillars of upthrust water move slowly over a beach within a mountainside, constructing from walls of spray a multicolored house of crystal. It is an elegiac garden, a water pantheon, this true Arcadian shrine of the rainforest, a temple on either side of the sky. In the last days of the willow month, outstretched. In the shadow of the tower on the river of wells, he writes all this down, a dream of the ancient tomorrow. He writes in the sunlight on a sheet of gold, new letters in a future language. His journey into this Africa of the mind. He injects the polite, Augustan pentameter with creation myths of the new creature, prismatic words, hot equatorial music. The knights of the royal axe now stop his road. They measure his shadow with a length of twine and bury it in deep places under the Adelphi. They stand in his path. Alone in the month of Tammuz, he must lie down and die by mysterious election, like Adonai in the summer of the great widow woman. Through his African hemisphere, the Lady of the Wells could bathe the workman with the universal medicine, flood the fallen earth with the waters of the sun. The royal ark mariners operate the Goetia. They chant to the counter-trinity in Great Queen Street. They watch overnight in smoking pentagrams circled. And though he never sleeps or leaves his body vacant, in the darkness there are titans with eyes of radiant metal, hurling shooting stars from their hands of steel. The June suns burn in the church spires, they sway and melt. The lava runs down to the riverside in long fiery roads. Most days he marches from Shoreditch to Mayfair through Soho. He knows all the broken down stairways of obscurity. He knows the ticking of afternoons in the penniless radical editor's absence. In the cut and thrust of King and Parliament he does his worst, evolving too fast from verse satire to razor-sharp essays. He laughs. The air is good. High up on the Penton he drifts this way again through magnetic fields. In legend the head of Merlin lies under this hill. The quiet ribbon of the fleet runs down, a sparkling trace of light in the green world below. The mother waters cool and healing flow. A second time he enters the Sala Grove and raises a red iron cup from the river of wells. He drinks a silver thread from the earth heart's core. But the royal arch call on the god name of Chrome to raise the child eater of Beltane out of the void. 7 doors open in subterranean hills. Red winds drive to the centre through 7 vents. Their battle cries are schismatic thought forms of the patriarchy. They howl from a rake's directory of women through black winding entrails under some hollow tor. He is the candidate driven in the great ordeal, a little child lost in the smokestack of Grand Lodge. But thus radiant winds don't touch him. He stands on the Zion of the Pan Cross, laughing, juggling the sun and moon in the smoke. He is the royal winged Aeon, Thomas the Rhymer. In his forehead is the 5-sided axis of the 8-spoked wheel. He turns to the south. The eye of the full moon opens in the pyramid of Michael. Quicksilver flashes through the island of glass. A dragon rises from the riverbed of Phlegethon. The air channel earth lines and dead highways of Atlantis re-engage from Red St. Mary in the West Country Drive to the tower of the first foundation on the conical mound. The dragon flies through the south of England. The light of the Mabinogion opens the sun gate, closed by Mordred, rusted in a tide race of days. On the field of Mars he drives back the red winds. The dragon force enters the city of fusion. The gardens of the sun do not burn. A subterranean Euphrates rises beside the tower he bathes, and his red curls glisten across his shoulders like galaxies floating in the microcosm of him. The water wheels turn in the Sumerian gardens. From the wooden platform of the Tetrarch smiling, the Sky Woman looks across the city, serviced by canals. Africa African islands shimmer in the wind, bell notes from the tower at the cardinal axis travel as bright waves into the Penton. Under the cowl of his druid hill, Merlin turns in his sun temple, sleeping in the dream time. Looking down the straight tracks to London, he sees, in the Vale of the royal rising of kings, Child Arthur with the head of a solar phoenix, raising the first sword of Avalon out of the stone. It is still in the zodiac, under the Dioscuri, the metropolitan desert of Shoreditch. The dry machinery of satire turns in his brain. The city is a castle of 1,000 turrets. On its twisting and multitudinous stairways, the slave lines go down 3 generations in darkness. They bluster in like giants from the apple country and the outer villages with holy wells, and they go down like sickly corn in the stony end. London of the broken spine, the dead stone countenance, a city once rich with harvesting the glorious arts, but now the waste ground of respectable greed, where even love, man's great angelic right, is sold with rat cunning or bartered for power, till the race of perfection is blind to the first star of night. How long can Albion lie in the sewers of Egypt, drunk on a dark elixir of pleasure, crushed from the misery of other men, to distill a philosophy of nihilism from the sweat and tears of self-made failure? This is the science of the Iron Masters. The fixed idea of the castle is under siege. There is plague and bubonic death in the dungeons. The dreaming heads of prophets are impaled on the sun gates. On fingers of stone that jut out across the main river, wolfhounds guard the solitary prison lanterns, swaying in the mist, chained in mid-air like black planets. A secret agent is making investigations in Shoreditch. This automaton of political witchcraft loiters in narrow lanes and gin houses. He is catching up with the mad boy radical redhead, upstart from the West Country, forger and firebrand, master of inflammatory pseudonyms. Long ago the saffron and lavender fields of Shoreditch were suitable for the poet exploring the air to the east of the city. There were avenues of mint and vervain. The sun bathed these medical pastures, and the stroller turned back late in the day, lured on by mildly toxic savannas. But now in these times Shoreditch does not inspire a romance of the rose or legend of temperance in poets. Sluggish clouds drag themselves from skyline to skyline, discoloured by fogs which vomit from the turmoil of streets. As the sun passes over from the sign of the twins, he moves inside the circle of the 7 hills. The sacred river flows under the city at Farringdon. From Mount Pleasant it falls to oblivion in Clerkenwell and winds as a sewer under Saffron Hill. In Holborn the Fleet is a secret ditch, the kingdom of typhoid, conduit of bad air, inching green slime and dog flesh down to the Watergate. Above the lost river in Brook Street, he hides away. He is safe. A utopian city is built again. Nobody knows his whereabouts in the rooftops. Certainly now the Palladian lines will bend more dramatically towards the unknown. He will trace the sunken river back to her source. He tiptoes on the parapet of Mrs. Angel's attic and scans the curve of the northern heights through haze, Trovant circles, in trains of ancient fable. Through the chronicles of Britain like a phantom city, she rises from the fogs on her slow river, sister to the old half-mythical Iberian Tartessus, Troinovant, great forerunner of London on the Thames. Over 10,000 rooftops the green-headed Penton rises, with other high skylines of the 10-mile ridge, the good walking country of the long crescent curved through Islington and Highgate to Jackstraw's castle, the semicircle of high land round Vale Royal. The evening, extended with cooler airs, calls him out into the Fleet Valley, lost world, up along the river of Wells, beneath high places. He bathes his burning eyes at Black Mary's pool and takes the Pantheon turnpike north, turning a myth of prior cities in his mind. Who can remember the antique names of London? They echo in the soliloquies of a widow by the fireside, and when someone rocks a child to sleep with rhymes, in legends that hang suspended between generations, fine spinnings of memory that glitter in the sunshine of eons, golden siftings from the terrible multiplicity of fact. Trovant, a foundation of the Dardanian bloodlines. And Cockaigne, high capital of megalithic Albion, city of the flashing Atlantean world. He walks beside the fleet through Mount Pleasant, his black Madonna, his inner woman, dreaming. She knows the slow wheel of civilizations. In the bronze light of sundown past country houses, he follows a dark gold mirror by the temple spa, with domes and colonnades for the healing water. Beside a smooth reach, where the water birds touch down, there is a woman in white, with eyes like green stars, a basket of fruit in her hand, brightly shining. Is she the Lady of the Wells? He turns. Vague in the dusk of the riverside, she goes down, woman of the red-running, sweet water fountains of the fleet. The suns of Tammuz burn in the ceiling of summer. Rumours say the king is half insane, and the craft lords hold the sceptre of the golden corn. The sons of the widow woman worship the corn god. Gin is the blood of the god on the altar, offering delirium and death to the common people. The children float in gin in their mothers' wombs. This grand destroyer is dirt cheap in the winter. A distiller's trade is the modus vivendi of demons. The island is rich in 1,000,000 gilded fields, but who will give away the excess of a good year? They grind the god and send him to the terrible stills. Bread is scarce on the streets, and the bow-legged children stand near warm lanterns of Geneva shops, defenceless, with men going down on the life scale in the shadows. Blood drenches the cornfield as these bald-headed children castrate their fathers and slit throats in back alleys. With visions of the dark city wheeling in his brain, he takes a night walk over the ridgeway, starting at the whirling cross of flowers in the gardens of Marylebone and climbing to Barrow Hill over St. John's Wood. The royal dynastic lines of Trovant, 15 generations of island kings, lie buried here beneath the ecliptic of Aries. A draconian atmosphere clings to the royal mound. Slaves work in chains, and the great wicker man stands over, arms folded on the spiral of Primrose Hill. The summit of Hampstead creates a similar atmosphere, the criminal impaled on the obelisk outside the courthouse. Circling the Fleet Valley through the north gate of Trovant, the lights of Camden Town burn far away. The riddle of the city is sensed in the northern heights, the tower that stands in the hollow of these hills. A solar wind from the fan of dawn's opening finds him on the southeastern dragon spur of the Penton, breaking his fast with dry biscuits and London water. With atavism's lantern burning low, the men of grand rank set a doom engine moving, a death for the red-headed one in the royal veil. His blood is charged with arcane knowledge. His bones will strengthen the temple of the firstborn. This candidate will light the emerald lamp in the forehead of Hades. But meantime he is dangerous, outside and apart. He raises from nowhere a second oceanic wave, a dark day for the sea walls of the necropolis. Quickly the 7 hills are transected with Baal fire. Through underground floodgates the tidal flame races 7 smoking roads to the royal chamber. The neutral furnace is charged with the shadow, a decaying hole in the flank of the universe, subducting astral fuel to the night of underspace. See, from high summer, the balancing point of the year, slowly the pagan sun begins to surrender the glorious fields of the open sky to darkness. He needs a red life to stay aloft and shine on the white island through the winter. He demands a man-child to indemnify his cycle. Long ago, in the post-Arcadian decline, the Flamens took the solar heart in the stone circles, and blood sprayed the golden pylons of Atlantis in the dream time. The motivation was divided. The superstitions were numberless. Men spoke of luck and not of the 8-spoked wheel. They lived in a forest of intricate hallucination. When the merchant was drowned in the fast river, the river gods were offended in their green caves. Actions and past transactions were overlooked. When stone jaws opened in the mountainsides and foul saliva boiled over 10 valley towns, the anger of subterranean deities was understood. Victims filled the throats of false gods. Famine was the signal for mass sacrificial infanticide. Secret wars broke out on subtle plains. Intoxicated with bad blood, inverse priestcraft exploited the driving forces of sexual union, distantly projecting dark joys of destruction. The lower astral light, infected with negative mentations, became a hell world, perceptible to spirits, a sad place for the clouded minds of the dead. Bitterly, men lost sight of the perfect contraries and equilibriums of the Elohim in themselves, naked and deathless in the blue-green summerland. And Lucifer, guardian of magnetic atmospheres, the light-bearer, struck against the state of Eden, invisible brilliance dark red with human delirium. This very high-standing angel of the morning star, first man's potential servant, reversed his face, transfigured in status to a subdivided anti-god, and fell. With the slow crash of galaxies colliding, light consciousness tainted with evil dreams, a godlike man had dreamt in the state of Eden. Shuddering, the principalities and thrones of ecstasis turned away as the sun-like intelligence exploded, sending shockwaves through the superphysical heavens. And the feminine subcreation of the androgynous Lucifer appeared before the masculine subcreated remnant, and she was called Lilith of Sin. Satan his name. And nothing of attraction satisfied these opposites, but only the iron marriage of negation lent force, as the dark spirit fell on the slopes of countless heavens, driven to rest in the third space of chaos, a burning ocean of ruined thought forms and auras, full of mathematical fermentations of mentality, the pit. A place which was made in the shadow of the summerland, an aborted cosmos, timeless and real to its travellers, blind souls on a steeply falling track. Men felt the wild echo of angelic wars. 2 skies exchanged their destinies and signatures of fate, and the earth passed into a cycle of apocalypse. Violently, the circular harbour cities of Atlantis sank in one night, stoned with cosmic fire, to burn out the ill-starred demoniac mysteries. But Albion, insular colony of Atlantis, remained, and the arch-flamen craft lords of the Golden Blade, in rites of blood, sent their red-headed victims to Lilith, a she-god exacting the life-force from her lovers, arrogant satans in a state of monomaniac fragmentation, constantly seeking to reflect themselves in her shadows, until The higher man from the very far east came walking across the blue road to Albion on a stormy night, and the flamens saw his light moving over the channel. In 3 days he perfected the cosmology of the triads, teaching on the sands of Saint Just, and the great harps of Britain rippled from the cliffs when Jesus spoke, until the golden knives of the last quarter crescent were sunk in the country under wave, and in good faith the men with red hands united 4 driftwood shafts, constructing the octagonal signature one Celtic knot, uniting the diagonal left-handed dark lunar radius with the vertical solar cross of the eastern phoenix, so that the island of silver metals could be made again in the image of the summerland. The first state of Emmanuel among the nations. It is late July, the sun, like a red crab, moves down the hot band of the 5 o'clock sky. On the housetops he contemplates his brilliant decline. The city is dead. Lord X has done his work. All levelling editors rot on the King's Bench now. They rave on fire with jail fever in the Fleet Prison. The clamp down is tighter than the waistband of Dr. Johnson. He can find no place for 14 lines, a farewell to the dead of the Bengal famine, and he goes hungry. But after sundown with his solitary craft, touching the night wind, the stars in the act of creation, he dreams by the ledge with soft nocturnal street noise. And when the drone of wheels on Saffron Hill grows faint after midnight, he takes the river road northwards through Farringdon to Old Battle Bridge. Here is a pathway lit by the summer moon. Deep in the silver graveyard of Vale Royal, the dead hours turn towards the dawn, and the hateful daytime hostilities of the town. He has traced so many useless circles through the smoking labyrinth of London. The moon sinks towards America on her orbit. He is weighing his chances in the coming winter, an untouchable poet with the press laws at his back. Should he now walk the dusty road down to Bristol and face the sneers of those who'd known he was nothing all along? A wind veering nowhere. He admits that his moon is in the house of imprisonment, but free will cannot hang fire for any planet. He questions the priority of the stars. He will break their wheels of predestination that turn below the horizons of life, eclipse their action with his latest work. In the winged language of his African poems, with fantastic mosaics and regions of transmography, he is setting in motion the cycles of legendary London. Obscure recollections, a world passed out of mind. He knows the mystery of the Sanctum Regnum. He knows the country under Angel Ridge, where a green king sways, overshadowing the incline, on the broad side of Primrose Hill at Shakespeare's Oak. The door of midsummer stands open to hidden lands, where Parliament Hill, green Athanor, lies circled with lakes of solar light. The island of free speech rises from the first matter. The subterranean aspects of Pentonville involve the alchemical hill chamber and underground watchtower of Merlin, a deep laboratory of Grail science, a furnace fired with the daylight tracking of stars, a megalithic rectilinear construct of great stones laid down underneath Islington before the flood. The tower was raised on the white mound of London with a red mortar in the traditions of darkness. The ravens are souls of men who rode on the wheels. Underneath the latter-day cranium of King Lud, the modern dome of a questionable enlightenment, a starred temple of the great stone era stands. Tot Hill, down on the river bend also, belongs to the theoretical city of Troynovant. The voice of the English people bellows from the swamps of Westminster, sunk in the wide reach. Here is Thorn Island, terrible place of the dead, a great place of power for the Benedictine order. And the 7th threshold is in Golden Square. the seventh cradle of the sun-child. Golden square, another winged disk on the serpent perimeter of Zion. These are 7 gates into the urban furnace. From a rain-scarred tomb towards Marylebone, he watches a last quarter moon sinking west, a pale ship foundering slowly on a shore of bricks. The slaves look up from their labour in the mausoleum, burying the royal dust of the house of Troy. The sons of the widow woman have surrounded Vale Royal with watchtowers and barbicans to interminate ruin. They say they have locked the sun-child out of the city. But the sons of the craft have forgotten the octave gate. The highway of Mercury, the messianic sun king, rides to the city of the Summerland from his zodiac. He moves in a green lane from Pan's Hill inward, a white rider with a helmet of gold. Look closely. The astral dead on this royal solar path leave the spectacle of their penalty in Tyburn, the hanging tree and the dust which scatters light, and follow the white rider into Zion, glorious pedestrians on pavements of light, moving through plantations of amaranth, gates of rare metal, into the terrestrial heaven of the garden of the sun. But the sons of Chrome know nothing of the 8th gate. If you look into the calendar of a man of pleasure, you see no days encircled with gold. The moon is gone. He leaps from the tomb and turns in darkness beside the Fleet River, waiting for the clouds to catch fire on the Islington Ridge. August rages in shimmering fumes of kitchen smokestacks through dead air. Carriages raise a train of dust as they roll. The city spins in the bitter heat. Her grace depends upon her sal volatile. The eyes of the cattle flare with riot. He is fighting a losing battle from an attic in Holborn. Government spies have traced him from Shoreditch down to the red light gutter district of Brook Street. He is changed from the winged man of 6 weeks earlier. His cheeks are sunken, like craters in his face, so pale and lunar, with a presence of the bone. The sense of another world looms around him. He lives on thin air and bad London water, while the back rent steadily mounts up over his head. The doomed promise of 1 day's work is payment for the line that took an hour. His creditors know he is on the gradient, and they drink to making a common cause with his landlady, the lace-maker, Mrs. Angel. But she is immovable, and the rhymer stays in his attic. Outside and recognized, he moves like a flash. His red hair streaming, Prince Absalom in flight through the byways and courtyards of Clerkenwell and Soho, leaving a breathless string of debt collectors and secret agents of George III in all stages of angry dehydration. And though, with her 1,000 times 1,000 treadwheels, London, the fallen angel, is wearing him down. Tonight the rain bathes the crown of the city. The dusty gold of her diadem is bathed with silver. The 7 red stones bound on her forehead, burning, cool their telluric fire in the crystalline air. He works in the rooftops. The London cycle goes forward. Constructions loom in astral fogs. Clearly, eras return. Legends illuminate, shimmer. In a dream sequence, he brings to life the dead Amazon of the ancient British rising, Great Britannia, who sleeps in the Valley of the Fleet. Troinovant burns. Londinium reels in black smoke. And Boadicea, riding with her torques of Cornish silver and pendants of the sun's golden blood upon her neck, riding naked to show her whip scars, tracks of the Roman flail on her white back. straight lines of the hard invader's hand, raises a blue sea of men like a very strong moon, and points from the northern heights to the valley of the Sun-Child, giving the fatal sign of her second descent. The chariots roll forward like a bay-long wave. The whole valley groans with a volcanic roaring from the revolutions of a myriad wooden wheels. The battle cries of the 80,000 split the air as Boadicea, descending, plunges in a 3-mile dive upon her prey. With the fast wheel of Nemesis, she enters the fleet valley. Old women and children run in her wake, all burning to rain death blows and destruction in the stranger's face. But an evil music wails from the city of willows, and the elephant's secret weapon of the master race lumber like 4-legged mountains into the battlefield. Raising their endless snouts, these dark grey monsters bellow discordant blasts of terror, strange whistles, and lead the Silver Legion with their snake-like faces. A bad scent of alien beasts on the crosswind burns in the nostrils of the Hyperborean war horses. They rear from their traces in panic and turn, with lethal blades revolving on the wheel. They totally mow down the blue flower of Albion's field. The riderless chariots cut red roads through the multitude. Look! As the self-destroying army wavers, the southerner falls like lightning, an Iron Man, cutting down women and children in his counter-offensive. The tight unit of his tortoise formation advances like a slow ship through a sea of gore, like a death machine that sails by methodic stars. Sober and cold, he ploughs on through the British, breathing in the supernatural fumes of carnage, rhythmically slashing through flesh with his logical sword. He gives no life where it can be spared. And here, in the deadlock and reversal of the royal veil riding, beneath the green curve of high places, Boadicea takes her suicide flight from the battlefield with Nightshade, the broken war queen, and her 2 daughters, winged ghosts fluttering down to the island of the dead. The Hanoverian star and the age of steam, these rise up, and the great inner good of man is forcefully denied by the laws of the Iron Master. The mill workers leave their relative Elysiums and look to the grimy towns for the promised land. They kill in the gin house nights and back alleys. The prison contractors lay out plans for Pentonvilles and grand panopticons, and judges lay foundation stones in the rain. Again he circles back to the overshadowing of the serpentine Celtic world by the Roman eagle, the rape of a fallen angel by the dog-fox logic. But also he ponders a colossal fusion of opposites. An androgyne England, born from the furious intercourse of warlike Britannia and the metal-skirted Mars. In fascination he circles round old Battlebridge and Boadicea's Cross. In the vast cycle of his London mysteries, he salutes the woman who sleeps beside the fleet. He touches her shoulder and wakes her gently, hoping she will rise up again in future rebellions and lay down her life for the equalization of the opposites. He dreams as he sets down the legends of the glorious 12th. The old trances are returning. He drifts again. The time clouds move 10,000 decades, and a country that is hidden from the senses stands forth. A heavy mist is shot with veins of sunlight. It is after the eagle's flight to the south, and towards the void of the dark ages. The royal solar orphan of the eastern Sungate approaches the silver blade in the anvil of glass. This is the prototype of Excalibur, excellent sword of fixed air, trailing a plume of stars. Child Arthur disembarks from a crystal ship, a glass craft docking in the old Port Royal of London, the willow basins and pools of the upper fleet reaches. Here is the temple wood and the tower of Constantine. Not far away in the meadows the knights are tilting. The hounds run to and fro with sticks in their mouths. Over the cube of glass in the riverside gardens, a glint of sunlight constantly flickers. Green atoms of the dragon's seed, strange magnets, trap the blade timelessly. There is tension. But the solar brilliance of the child king rises to heighten the ratio of light against darkness, causing the deep mouth of Typhon to open and free in slow motion the globe of the dazzling pearl, transfixed at the final rim and tip of the blade. The silver edge slides back from the throat of stone, and the palm of the anima floats in the sunlight. Pavilions of the respected victory appear. Merlin stands before the Trinity, while Arthur descends into the smoke of Hinnom and cuts down the idol of chrome. Selah. The vision ends. He vanishes into his body and returns to himself on the rooftops in bright moonlight, sighting to the Penton exceptional highland. The dream magician with crystal rods sits under this hill with star maps and chalices, calculating the birth curves of solar gods. Thomas the Rhymer. He shadows an old tramp moving up the Gray's Inn Road, a stumbling derelict, bloody from the gin dives, inching along in sunshine. A friendly soul on the road to taste the good waters from the brass cups on chains at the well of St. Chad. He prophesies drinking himself into second childhood. He swears by St. Chad, the patron saint of new creatures. He lumbers northwards, old boots grinning at the front. But is he a man or the spirit of the shapeshifter Merlin? Thomas, he believes too much. He has drunk too deeply from the river of wells. He is mad by every measure of a standard man. But now he is crossing the post-Arthurian chasm. Military theatre, defensive manoeuvres still wheel. The summer army breaks upon England's shield wall, the battle of the Holy River in the Royal Vale. And further on, in the Saxon dusk, he sees the magical assassination of Ironside. The knife sent by Canute moves in the air. The mighty youth is cut down at the Cross of Kings. The solar hero falls to the earth at sunset. The main man of the dragon roads is dead. His red heels plunge through the soil. But the Holy Spirit leaps out of the body of Ironside like a fountain, and the white church is washed with aqua solis, a golden water made from the way of good action. Perpetual choirs sing African masses and work songs until a great span of darkness shadows England. Nothing moves on the ancient horizons. He waits for his vision to wheel back brightly, and now it is the metropolis of the Plantagenets. To the north, beneath blond cornfields and dark woods, a tunnel goes snaking through the London clay, a corridor under wind-shifted trees. From the great hunting palace at Tottenham Court, it leads away here beneath a line of poplars. Further on, bridging the Fleet as a mirror image, an arch reflected below the riverbed, a secret way into the mystic city of willows. Is the treasure still hidden in the house of white doves, in the Easter crypt, in the black weaver's lodge, under the foundations of the oldest house in Christendom? Is it the Trojan crown of Lud? Is it the sword Excalibur? Is it the treasure of the city of ladies? Is it true? No man has dared look into the eye of the labyrinth under Vale Royal. Are the lost books of Britain still buried in the garden of the sun, the conical mound? Or has everything been stolen by the men of grand rank? torches have moved beneath the fields. From the lowest levels of the palace at Tottenham Court, subterranean processions have set out to the east. John Plantagenet came this way on the night a high wind wrecked King Richard in the Adriatic, and he came here again, under interdiction, when no bells rang in England, the church doors chained, daring to set a fire in the neutral furnace, and drive the force of the dragon roads to France. But the people remember the dead son of Pendragon. A second Arthur from the Tudor bloodline springs forward. His banners and mystical pageants move west, from Pancras by the lanes to Old St. Paul's, but the prince dies young. His cycle ends too soon. He is too well fashioned in the template of the fatal myth. And so Elizabeth sings the lamentations of Ishtar, because there is no Tudor sun-child to rise and rule the southern world of the Orinoco and build dynastic Britons down among those rivers. See, she carries the winged sphere with lanterns through the earth when sending the foul breath of Typhon on the ships of Spain. Or is it the hand of the good Dr. John Grand Magus, which turns the mirrors on the watchtowers of the Golden Section, a secret agent overlooking the Platonic state? Face down, young Faustus, Elizabethan heretic, floats in the royal dock waters with a 12-inch jackknife, erect from his back like a mast from a galleon's keel. He races on with the torch of a new language. He has jumped the gulf from the Renaissance with the miracle plays and songs of merry England. He has passed through the winter since the Middle Ages, carrying the soul of fire through white rains of ice and crystal winds that cut into the essence of himself. Hand servant of the sun, hand servant of the moon, he brings good news from Memphis of the white walls, an end to the aristocracy of commerce. In his African summerland, the modern flame rears up and dances with chemical brilliance. The ancient green is touched by a fantastic ray. But now exhaustion spins into strange half-states. Black Wing, the night crow, hovers if he sleeps. Bitter acids retch in his throat. Dreams come. In the morning he lies with his back brain burning. How much longer can his barbaric laughter ring out? Today he must choose between the luxuries of ink and biscuits. The attic is a furnace at noon, under shimmering black. He curses at the thoroughbred sun until twilight, waiting for night to hold back his full-blooded glory. Now he props himself by the cool window and considers the gain to be had from failure, the poise of the wing transcending adverse days. His line of flight, too dangerous for reason, finds a new city in a bright sky of myth, a blue sphere turning slowly to his greatest end. Near wonderful anvils, through openings of true cycles, he navigates the legends of London stone, the legends of the Trojan race in the Silver Islands. The primary chronicles of Britain make it clear. Red Troy burned down when the flashing eyes of her talisman turned on the city in her destiny's final day. The supernatural Palladium forged with cosmic fire, a deity built from a falling star in Atlantis, was then transferred into Albion with the Trojan line, and stood in the temple of Diana in Troynovant, an idol magnified with the assassination of priest-kings and delirious hecatombs of the 100 male children, all slaughtered with fire on the hill of Lux, by the white priests of ancient Dardania, the Druids, burning the sun god at the gates of Lud. South over 10,000 rooftops he scans. Beneath the cathedral of Antichrist is the stone circle, where the red-headed one lies down for the golden knife. He feels the gaping split in the depths of all being. The dome is only one half of the necessary sphere, the pure globe of the soul which can travel into heaven. His exiled sister of the first cause is still more distant than Vega from Altair in the month of rains, when the sky rivers flood and the lowest suns are drowned. Within him her eclipse has been complete, but tonight with the tolling of the fourth clock slowly, the star called Maria is reflected in the river of Wales. He could shout the secret things from the housetops, but no one would hear him in the deeply sleeping metropolis, and yet he hears all the voices in the people's dreams. Dead children scream across ether in moonlight, the smoking chimneys of Coram fields in flame, where 10,000 foundlings of the infant poor fill mass graves and makeshift pits in common ground, an automatic holocaust rendered to the Lord of the Flies from the ominous hospital north of Great Ormond Street. Look! The backbones of dead children fuse into stone and stretch out in the spirit world like a flying buttress to shore up the Red Cross of Babylon for 3 more years. He feels the shockwave of 10,000 children's voices, and their typhus-fevered tossing in rag beds moves him with abstract maternal drive to Shudder Grand Lodge, and the Tower of the Winds begins to sway, and deep foundations come adrift in the void, and faint cracks open in the structure of the royal arch. In the sun the city lies like a slumbering serpent. Its streets are the windings of a great constrictor that has made a meal of far too many limbs, a mouthful of numberless carcasses, now attacked by the juices of a narrow stomach, vastly swollen out and sagging in the dust for centuries on end. This tract has swallowed the whole of Africa. It seeks to digest the subcontinent also. This serpent, longer than the Great Wall of China, is also wrapped beneath the gulfs, trailed across the midnight floor of oceans, the ruined garden cities of Atlantis. Lazier even than the slave of slow dreams, who traces the cloud wake through bluest kingdoms to heavenly cities, built like rings of air, this terrible sentient spiral through space and time, is planning to unhinge its jaws and swallow the sun to gorge itself on the great yellow star like an egg. The head and tail of this morbid worm are in London. They meet in the Grand Lodge of England's craft lords. King George is the ultimate combination of tooth and scale. Perpetually the city sleeps in a reptile trance, glutted on pig fat and slavery's cane sugar. Sometimes the coils in the cobbled streets shift as a poor man, some Christ in torment, slips and stumbles, faint with hunger, and polishes the black stones with his rags as he falls. Sometimes a poet, in a dazed excursion, seeking to elucidate the arcane identity between the 8-spoked Union Jack and the labarum, wandering light-headed over the highways, drives his sword of intellect between the stones and penetrates into the poison flesh below. Then the air fills with ashes and his dizziness returns. Then he is marked out for action at a distance. Then he feels the antagonistic ray. But his Africa glistens deep down in the abyss. She will return with a festival of lights and drums which are heated at the side of the road. She will come back with the sun-child in Maytime, laying bright wreaths for old man winter, bathing a dead world in living colours, dancing in the war zones on the green avenues, between the trees with golden trunks, on the 12th day of the future transformation. True Thomas walks again in the fields of Pangrace, over the arch of Battle Bridge in half-light, into the Grail beneath the ring of high places. The northern horn of the coming moon breaks over the ridge of Islington. The cycles of Vale Royal turn within him. He can see tall trees standing clear on the skyline, bathing their great sun-beaten arms in the cool silver flood advancing. The eastern gate of the city of the millennium stands open. His work is nearly done. St. Mary Redcliffe rocks the child of the eightfold cross in her arms. He passes up through the moated square and earthworks, still long in his stride, gaunt limbs worn out, moving through ivy and stones of the ancient ditches. Outstretched in moonlight, he sees the great ramp. The silver rays burn on the adjacent river. He knows the secret of Constantine the Great. He looks back down the curvature of time to the 3rd century, where the island of Britain hangs in the metal talons of the Roman eagle. What does he see in the trans-temporal landscape? Londinium stands again after the night of fire. The Roman bankers bleed their client princes. Where the war queen's dead have gone with the rains, where blood went down like a red tide through the soil, and flies crawl into stiff gaping mouths, where the fleet was dammed with bones and flooded, monstrously washing worm-eaten dead flesh downstream through a levelled and smoking city, it is all forgotten. It was many years ago. Lud's town is made again after 61. Londinium Augusta stands now in 312. Under a steel-grey sky the city broods. She is looking at Rome in the middle distance, Rome with her thick-set magnificence in decay, a haughty madam with her circus of pleasure, where emotions tormented by boredom in the masses flare up and rage with a vulgar flame, scorching the innocent sky with laughter, while blood is shed in a monthly cleansing of angry fevers threatening the martial state. A civilization descends towards the zero. A whole macrocosm rots into saline oblivion. The silver-studded Roman flail decays. But in the north countries the wheel of revolution turns in the sky quarters above Londinium. The enchantment of the great straight line gives way. A very logical empire of world domination meets resistance from the spirit of the times. Change has shown her hand in these decades. Constantine, rebel emperor of the West, openly turns his back on patrician gods, 100 second-hand deities on loan from the Greeks, who borrowed them from Egypt when theology had already forgotten how the Lord of Two Horizons built the star clouds of the night sky, the child demiurge of the first gestation from nothingness. A pan-Celtic army is camped in vast lands, the zone of the old star temple by the river of Wales. Constantine is raising his hand against Rome. He has weighed the dying pantheon of his fathers against the rising sun of the original truth. This man travels with the axis of the Celtic Church. Someone opened the book of Revelation. When he was a child of 7 and his eye was single, she, the same one, revealed the high history of the Grail. She made a moonboat come floating to Britain. She made a light move through the Mendip Hills. Royal Helena, widow of the Caesar of the West. Now her first descendant lies under shining tents. Constantine's pavilions shine all colours and shades. North of Londinium, in the fields of the flowers of light, the Trojan line palaces lie here in ruins, but the first foundation of the new Druid Trinity stands 8-sided on the conical mound by the river. A wandering Merlin of the fish-sun millennium christened the girl-child Helena in the race of the fleet, and the spirit said, "Build my temple with tongues of fire." The waters of the fleet remember the ritual quarter days, the flash of the golden knife, the blood and ashes floating down from the sanctuary of megalithic times. But now the young willows kiss the face of the river. They do not stiffen under the Beltane moon, nor do they cry out silently with the victim of the sickle. The static air of the hot summer nights bears down like a hand upon the plains. The earth is hushed in the tension of the solstice. Constantine waits for sleep in the starlight of Britain. The constellations burn like the many distant clans of his army. He needs a sign to bind them to one centre, an axis they can circle from a single rim as the zodiac swings beneath the zenith, following the lane of the ecliptic, the road of the sun. The Emperor of the West is in the dream time now. He sees a cave in the Valley of the Fleet, and a child with a rainbow body lying hidden there, guarded by centurions, gold and blue-winged angels. Thunder rolls through the beautiful dark-skinned heavens. Constantine wakes in the daylight of a higher world. A city like a sun-wheel spins in a different sky. 4 lines through 9 rings the cross of kings. Helios transfigured and revolving in splendor. Tongues of fire strike out from the wheel and echo like gongs and thunder in the revolutions, and voices ring from the sun-like city spinning. He is building a metaphysical palace with one great entrance from the plane of earth, a mansion of good works for his royal soul. But the buildings of the lower city cast long shadows. Towards him, alone in the hell worlds of London, the ladies of the night make hollow promises of love. Magdalene, from the red doorways of Holborn, sends him her sweet call to decadence through the dark, but he likes to hear such colourful talk in the dusk. The harlots have the secrets of high places, great stones to cast from the quarry of possible satire, the nocturnal doings of some pure stranger to sin. But the first stone of accusation falls from his hand. He is in love with the white maid of Vale Royal. He dreams the reunion of all phenomena. A small white unicorn canters in magnetic glades. Angels of sunlight and water make love. The whisper of their intercourse calms the nervous air. A new circulation of the joy wheel begins. 8 tangent arms, 2 evergreen roots, fuse to shade the new earth of the millennium. At dawn, the army is ranked in cool mist by the river. Each man has the 8-spoked spinning of the Logos tracked in the shining bronze of his circular shield. A wind of change now blows through the Roman state. These men are certain to storm the great southern citadel, but not beneath the pagan standard of the eagle. A phoenix is born from the Celtic twilight. The ancient wheel unites the children of Mars. The new men march for the white coast at noon. Very clearly, Armorica and Aquitaine point to the Susa Pass. A pan-Celtic army descends through the Lombardy plains to break the dynasty of iron at the Milvian Bridge. With the thunder of wheels along the Flaminian Way, the fast British war chariots carry the sign of the sun foreseen in the north for 1,000 years. This is the end of the Second Tetrarchy. The truth of the prophecy of the Circus Maximus, the wheel of Constantine, cannot be turned aside. His field army in a twice outnumbered ratio drives the tyrant from the great red stone 9 miles to the blood-red river death under the walls of Rome. In a straightforward victory the people are safe. In this hard clash of nations no civilian dies. But the politics of Christendom are born. Constantine of Britain enters with miraculous tactics the city of 400 temples on 7 hills. He is welcomed in the name of Sol Invictus. But rapidly, the pagan high pontiff sees behind this title he constructs a number from the name of Constantine, finds a connection with the rising Eastern Christ. The Pontifex Maximus captains the dead faith of state, but the 4 rivers of paradise flow from one rock, and only the island arch flamens of the Sunchild see the spinning of 4 and the fusion of 8. The lunar and solar crosses locked in one octagonal flower, the luminous light geometry of the name. He is reading in the records of the back days. He lies like a dead man on the low bed, stiff and cold, only slightly inhaling the air of this little room. The attic imposes the claustrophobic air of a coffin. It could be the sarcophagus of the king's chamber, where the lord of Lower Egypt learns to read the night writing. Surely he will wake when someone hammers on the door. It is only Mrs. Angel, frightened by 3 days' silence. But no. He is in the long sleep of the mystics. He stands on the first cube of energy and looks out as though from a headland, scanning down the turquoise mirror of the Mediterranean. 9 ships go cutting round the Cape of Italy. It is early in the reign of Constantine the Great. The Princess Helena is sailing for the Palestine coast. Into the sunburned ports of Tyre and Zidon, down the lower coast of Samaria she sails. On headlands of red gold the castles of the Levant shine like clasps on the edge of a dark garment, or blaze with their superstructures over the shoreline, like shields which hang by pavilions in semi-darkness. But Helena sees black visions on fire in the dusk. Her son has felt the cold wind of spellcraft, the incest in his palace, the executions. The pontiffs of the Roman zodiacal gods have reacted with incantations to images hung with chains and foul hymns of the Plutonian altars. She knows their labours and signs of antipathy, and so she searches for trace of the risen sun. She travels the dusty roads towards Transjordan. She needs a miraculous armour of revelation, the brilliant metal that took the Milvian bridge. Her caravan crosses the plain of Arimathea. Somewhere the emperor is building his rich basilicas. Number and meaning merge in the elevations, and blue regions open to the eye of the mind, silver and sapphire in the lucid cities, and united metropole of the higher states, the cities of Christ with pavements of amber and light. But Constantine wavers in his flight towards deathlessness. And Helena, standing in the high plain of Rephaim, looks down upon the shipwrecked citadel of David, the blackened remnant of Solomon's walls, fired by Titus in the time of the overturning, when Hierosolyma the Eternal saw her end. The moon of 8 cycles is lightly afloat in the river that sings of one day transforming the city. But London, with dust in her heart, denies the time. Out here, in the silent second hour of the morning, the flames by the altar die down and creep into embers. The murderer smokes opium, prone by the fire in dreams. The blonde Cockney harlot holds on to poor Tom, tells of her ride with the highwayman from Holloway, a fallen woman astride a flying beast. O memory of heaven, the flesh is a wild horse in the summer nights. And the London Odyssey of Thomas the Rhymer moves with mysterious undercurrents of fatality. The dreamer errs in flight on the dragon's back. And Helena, standing in the house of white doves, blesses him against the impending day. The moons go round in the hill country of Judea. A princess of Britain bathes in hidden rivers, a master of the secret doctrine of the first emanation, a rabbi, his beard like a silver flame streaming to earth, his eyes smoke blue with burning the midnight lamp, teaches her all the parallel biblical legends. Here in the olive woods, over the pool of Siloam, sunlight filters through the swaying of the green. Once, long ago, when all things met upon the mountain, the tree of paradise stood among the stars. Comets like the phoenix bird trailed through its branches, and there the messianic sun-child of the true existence danced with a circular quality of movement to the supernatural music of the galaxies turning. There where red suns die, leaves shed from summer, to be born again among radiant branches and star clouds, he danced, crushing golden oils from the solar fruit and offering a sweet-tasting light to the coming worlds. For the body of the first sidereal Adam had been torn into gender and mirror images, created the living tetrad of 4-quarter man, and the lord of the dance, with his right hand and his left, cut a flashing branch from the star-bearing tree of paradise and let it fall into Eden as an instrument of the future. For the Ancient of Days had made the second Adam, as man and woman from the tempered dust of suns, from masculine stardust free and sterile, fused with the rich black earth of feminine spheres. But the well-made of Eden, in their magnificent duality, had fouled the union of joy with the mind of death. And though the Ancient of Days set a time for the spirit, saying that the soul should not go fixedly into darkness like a spark from colliding planets in a blacked-out void, the body was doomed. And therefore the tree of paradise fed on the strong bones of Adam when the firstborn died, probing in the magnificent corpse of Eve. The golden roots drank at the inward core, and from red clay translated the word made flesh, a free light flying to superior creations. And still the radiant world axis of the sun tree cast a shade north of Eden under the canopy, until the first rains thundered from the sphere of heat, and sky oceans sank the earth for a long night, unmaking dry land with waters to reverse the rise of evil from the misconstruction of the good. Then rapidly the tree of paradise was transplanted into the keel of the ark, a mainmast faithfully rising through 40 decks till the flood went down, until Noah's wife, while Noah was planting vineyards, set it to the south of the future Jerusalem standing, where Judah's men of God slept in its shade, till Solomon's great dream flowered, and he struck it down, still meaning to set one mystic pylon rising midway and single the tower of his temple gate, but long complexities casting a sea of bronze, and everlasting setbacks with rafters of ebony arose, and time saw the tree of paradise left to one side, until it was a nuisance lying in the woodyards, until a good timber to span the Kedron was needed, and under their heels men trampled the tree of life. The temple rose, a race memory of ziggurats, the shadow of the house of Solomon crossing its walls, the gutters scarlet with the blood of white doves. But Sheba, who had seen the magnificence of everything, crossing the river with the royal lord of Israel by night, knelt on the footbridge and saw another world in the waters, a silver pine towering into the skies of Canaan, hung with zodiacs and 1,000 solar lamps, and a child dancing from the upper to the lower branches. The sun shoots down through the garden of Gethsemane, rays tinted green in their long golden flight, and a silence falls at the very far limits of a legend. Somewhere the Black Queen reset the tree of heaven, but those days are lost and mythological in these times. The star of Jacob gone under the horizon of the Gentiles, all is destroyed, and Emmanuel is yet to come. How will he find the branch from the blue heights of paradise, the tree predestined to serve him in the end times? The old man sleeps. Jerusalem sleeps, downcast. But Helen keeps watch. Vague mirrors in the back of her mind show her the slanting roads to the place of the skull. She looks, reflections burn in a stream of memory, rumours floating in white market squares, and now on a secret causeway in darkness she rises to derelict ground, a very sad garden in the heights, where as the sun-wheel rolls over the horizons of Israel, the fast in a mounting fire ascends in her spine. She tastes the electric waters of salvation. Mystic wine rains on her tongue. It is sweet. She drinks the golden vintage of the solar heavens. She can see the high place where the sun-child dances. She soars in motionless flight through a sky of flame. There are superphysical beings, miracles of tenderness. In plains of rich and many-coloured shadows, firebirds cross the atmospheres in shining flocks, and follow through chains of island galaxies the royal winged son of the Trinity, dancing, spinning with arms of heliocentric splendour into the still axle tree beyond star changes. Beside the altar in starlight the fire is out. He who will not be the laureate of England cradles the harlot, penetrates her gently, virgin again in this night. She means him no harm, but the micro-animals of syphilis swim into his spine. The elect of 9 are chanting the descent to Gehenna. True, Thomas. He lies with this ancient street girl of 20, infected by a man of grand rank in her 14th year. A fallen woman is higher than a self-righteous man. The morbus enters, the curse intensifies, the sorrows contracted in the country of love in the 17th summer. Sleeping he turns on a broken plain of cold flags, half waking, as an old moon sinks into Marylebone, whispering, "Watch with me, watch with me." these words, and 9 ships come sailing from the Holy Land. It is early in the days of Constantine the Great. Helena returns with her treasure from the skies of light, from very far away in the metaphysical east, where the rose of Jericho blows through burning Palestine. She sails with the 8-spoked wheel of a new revelation. She has seen the secret flash from a 5-sided star, the pentagram at the heart of an 8-fold spinning, the 6 directions of space and 2 of time, her lion heart of willpower and unicorn of endurance, her firebird of insight and winged man of dreams. The 4 bodiless heavenly creatures adorn her. Her black ship winds inland on the silver Isis. Her mast is the well-balanced tree of Eden. La belle Helene returns as a saint into Britannia. Under the Penton, through green-shaded reaches, she sails to the messianic valley of Londinium, where 7 skies opened in levels above her sun. There are open-air dances in Vale Royal. The 3 nails are buried, the old broad arrow flies, ancient mark of the Trinity in the islands, with a long drone of chanting on the shaded river straits, and with the cult of bells the bards glorify Godhead, Helen to the left, Christ to the right of Tetragrammaton. But Constantine stands in the east of a new Christian empire. The walls of Byzantium are measured out with amber rods, opulent citadel, doomed fortress of patriarchs. And Rome lies deep in the shadow of the dying god. The high grades and cycles of the green man thrust forward turn with red wheels, a machine of dark seasons. But Helena stands in the western Fortunate Islands, the dark bronze sun-child incarnate beside her, virgin of the paradise gardens of the royal Vale, under the double rainbow in the house of white doves, near the little cathedral of the sun-child by the river, excellent meeting house of the sun and moon. The traffic of clouds moves in long trains down the nocturnal avenues of the sky. He stands on the ancient earthworks, self-complete. He has seen the hidden city of fusion where dream and action merge their qualities under flags of the microcosmic heaven. Now he is facing the day of hard work. He bathes his face and drinks from the river of wells, oh, the waters of life from the vast streaming fleet. The moon wears a mask of his face in the river. He leans too far on Battle Bridge, moon-struck, and laughs, Thomas of Britain, Axis man. In the pale relief of a daybreak landscape, he turns, moving through an endless graveyard of medieval times, starting for modern-day Holborn, still in his dreams. A strange light shines in the river valley of the treasure house. Look, the southern ships of Augustine are sailing. The altar stone floats on the fleet's silver road. But here, just here, under white ground mist, a black door yawns in the earth, wide open, the subterranean house of rotten walls. He watches the rich for the water-bearer rising, and crosses the void of no foundation. 1 step, and he falls outstretched into darkness, plunging many nights. The air in the garret races, made of fire. His head aches and sings in a deep shaft somewhere. A spider has laid her poison eggs in his brain. His clothes are flecked with mud of the grave pit. He stares at some dry powdered bread in his hand, each grain surrounded by small blue flickering ribs of his rib cage curve like hoops of fire. Wild animals trapped within him leap through, howling in the crucified night circus of his flesh. Each bone is a shifting ridge of sand that burns with the friction of each intaken breath, dunes in the hot, burning ground of his chest. His head overheats, his skin is burst open with the spurs of the dark rider of his straightened road. The flesh is mined out of his face, quarried from his cheeks. But visions of the city above the city come now. Sometimes small animals glide through the walls. It is not so mysterious halfway between the worlds, and the cycle of poems goes forward. Cursing, in bitter mythic swamps he cuts and slashes sections from the long constrictor of 10,000 lines, his hydra-headed uncoiled epic song. Red winds rage in magnetic corridors, ghost rivers flow through a dream world strangely. 9 days ago real blood circulated this body, now with only some lukewarm London water to cool the delirium, the fire stream. He battles on, he drives the new language all night to forge the legend. He puts his muse on the rack till she screams and confesses the fantastic truth. Where the fleet runs under the ramp of Belsize Wood, the mirrors of Beltane shine to the sacred flood. The sunlight in water creates the body of the Logos. With crystals and rays, Merlin works through the night. From the Penton, he sights through the hills and fairy castles of the forest of Middlesex. Nothing is overcast. The mirrors of the Grail ships sparkle in Aquarius. But Morgana is near, the demons rise on the plains, the spiral transverse out of the underworld swarms, chanting the tetragrammaton backwards they sweat metallic vapours exhaling supernatural clouds from their sexual organs. The bittersweet stench of the combustion of child flesh floats through London's streets. In the Vale of Hinnom they are passing the firstborn through flames to Moloch. The temples and churches capsize. The universe burns. The terrible singleness of the subcreated light-bearer takes form in the smoke from the 7 chimneys. The solar cross and the saltire break apart. St. Catherine is fixed on the fire-wheel and rolls, burning from the north rim of London to the dragon's mouth. The demons are hard at it, they jealously reverse. The drive wheels and gears of the Aquarian dawn disengage the masculine and feminine trigrams, dry up the river low with a blast of black fire, and burn the book of changes on the stony bed. This is the war in the place called Vale Royal. Ironside falls at the bridge to Canute, but the Aqua Fontana rises in the Summerland, Child Arthur standing on the cardinal axis. The brilliant cone in the garden of the polar sun drags the star-trailing sword of Avalon skyward. There is a war in the Valley of the Kings. But new moons rise from a cauldron of lakes, and a mill with sails of silver glass turns with a vision of justice towards the dawn. The oppressor is reborn as the oppressed. But the perpetual archmaster of the Red Cross of Memphis, with counterweights of terrible prayers and vigils, slows down the wheels and retrogrades the millennium. He throws planets from the universe of imitation light with dead celestial mechanics into the balance. He calls to the subplanes of the abyss. The foundations, the roof decks of the Red Temple shudder. They break up. The whole sky quakes. The floor of Vale Royal erupts. The great stone man, fire streaming from his heels, his knees and elbows belching red flame, stands up. He towers in the valley of the Sun-Child, a colossus. With one stone foot he crushes Islington, the other foot is wedged against Primrose Hill. He laughs, and a black steam pours from his mouth of stone. On the landing, where a vague shaft of moonlight probes through a dusty window down a rear wall, he stops and sways, while the air goes dark, his eardrums thunder. He holds his glass up to the moonlight, and the water gains a milky brilliance. He waits. There are 4 long flights to Mrs. Angel's attic. He is tired of the multiple battlefields of each moment, of drawing breath to the blazing oxygen forges. The strong hallucinations have taken over. There are causeways of water and ramps of jade in the star cities of the eternal summer. It is all right to leave now, abandon the tilted earth, to winter with skies choked yellow in December, the dirty grey of the belly of a dead stray dog. There are highways to the serene countries. On the third landing he kneels, and half the water spills on bare floorboards. He wants forgiveness. He cannot rise. The bones of his skull are on fire. The red winds lacerate deeper than the body of contraction. Lilith, spirit of abandoned places, hovers in ether, siren tongue singing. Look, she steadies the glass as he rises up and dissolves the evil milk of her breast inside. He crosses a threshold into the final place. The floor is strewn with a rain of torn white. The window blows open, the candle blows out, and the fragments of paper stir in a faint shadow dance. He laughs. So what if the poem of summer is destroyed, and a sickness of Venus burns in his lower spine? He has seen enough of the future towards the dawn. From vial to glass he tips the poison down, and stands this bitter cup by the low bed frame, and lies back in shadow, half in a square of the moon. The black sun of opium passes over his lips. An hour goes by, the silver square shifting. He drinks to the transcendental summer stars. He runs with a marionette sensation of destiny leading him down and down, deeper into the thousand avenues of a labyrinth. He plunges down through crumbling gorges, disintegrating canyons of metal. From towering ridges of vertical iron, chromium lava drains in a flat cascade. In steaming tides of molten bronze, there are vague protean faces with bubbling eyes, half familiar, transformed into gargoyles. Fractured heights on the point of falling groan, but never quite give way. He comes face to face with his mother's image, her forehead scored with evil tracks of pain, never to be forgotten. He whirls on down the ravines. His ancient defences are inwardly shaken. He is far underneath the latitudes of sleep, deep in the storm-crossed interior. Here the sky is overclouded, dense. A vast intersection lies in half-light. Endlessness weighs upon stale air. There are massive buildings in partial ruin. Solid flanks of black masonry merge with the sky or lie across the junction where they have fallen. Two clouds suddenly disengage, and a slender ray of what could be moonlight shines into this melancholy place. Oh, see, something like a dead leaf comes tumbling through the dust, brown and furled, but larger in scale than a leaf, and more like a clenched fist drained of blood that rolls away with its own motion into the shadows, clicking its bones and scuttling like the dry brown tissue that blows down the autumn gutters of a midnight street. He runs, advancing in a state of shock. Each footstep raises an eruption of dust. The elect of nine will trace his way below. Look, an angular heap of rubble and rafters, a red iron cup full of dust, hangs on a chain. He finds himself by a dry well, deep in the earth. The great intersection in Twilight is somewhere above. He can hear the sound of water cascading, or is it the sound of fire which splashes with tongues? He is burning the dusty way down through the gorges. Delirium. He leans through the structure, combing the air with his fingers, stretching his hand through the stone foundation for water. But something slides on his forehead. A heavy fluid, ice cold, it floods down his face in a freezing trail and sways from his high cheekbone like a rope. Oblivion caresses him. With a cold hand, the clear thought dies. Bitter past days recede. The fluid sways, descending into the dust. Look up, Thomas. The tall shadow woman, her beautiful mouth overflows with an icy flux. Her feet are blackened, twisted and chained. She motions you to drink, to cup your hands. Her feet are disfigured knobs of flesh and bone. You will not drink. She beckons you into the night. You enter like an autonomous shadow. She leads you down with her chained gait, iron dragging on stone, the Lady of the Wells. In a much deeper level of the hypnagogic city, much lower down in the sadness of the canyons, you come to the river which swirls with eddies of fire, the sombre river of liquid flame which smokes as it rolls through the cities of the pit and falls with cataracts of burning matter to non-entity. See, from a low bridge over smoking foam, the red fort looms on a lightning-struck horizon, a scarlet majesty of war engines flashing, the poisoned flower of a military necropolis, with perfumes of sulphur and child flesh drifting from 7 smokestacks rising on the roofs like fins. Enter through armour-plated corridors, alone through waves of heat and muffled drums and trumpets, with dull explosions shaking the rusted floors, where walls of reality slide against one another, far from any plane of consecutive hours. You move with the helplessness of a sleepwalker, entering into the royal arch-darkness, red walls of velvet tower as tall as houses. The air is a dry rag trapped in your throat. Suffocation from somewhere. Death fires thunder. You enter the lowermost place of dead shadows. With faces wrapped in metal they surround you. Dark gods of underspace, dead powers hellborn, vainglorious ones of the intractable negation, drunk on firewaters, aged under Tartarus stone. Burning your thirst must dictate that you take a glass from any of 1,000 of these grand elixirs. They are drinking the black spumante of the military mind. Will you taste a white-hot tincture of state religion, or sip the nectar from a good year of sweated labour? The velvet walls catch fire as you refuse. They use alphabetic spellcraft to force you to drink, to drain the skull bowl of anti-life. Think, Thomas, they must not track your future steps in time. Free one, you take on the form of the royal winged youth, juggling the sun and moon in either hand. You are the prophet of the inner heavens. Truly you will not drink the filters of the slave forts. Demons surround you, their foreheads swollen with the awful churning of fluids underneath. Drunk on the red sweat of bull-whipped children, they breathe on you the flowers of arsenic. They heat the obelisk, transfixing the heart of Absalom. Thigh-bone trumpets moan in the steam clouds. They bind you with the tendons of paralytics. The commander of the temple opens the trapdoor of the candidate. The bowed one of Imbolc tramples in black flames. The red-headed one is going to the mouth of Chrome. They cast you into the furnace of total night. Here is a meadowland with a swift river. The lambs roll in the warm grass, and the water sparkles by blue reeds. Here is a hill, a high cone of land by the river. On the hill is the church, with the walls of white water and the rafters of golden sunlight. The doors are wide open, the 8 doors of silver. The choirs come up on the winding road from the river. They sing the excellent song of charity. The golden wind that made the sunlight blows through the open doors. Everyone can see it. The people love this temple as they would their own child. They bathe from the banks of the beautiful river, under the flags and jewels of the 8-spoked wheels. The garlands of trigrams glisten. Long after the catastrophes of fire and ice, the ship of mirrors with the summer stars foaming under her keel returns, rounding the promontory of delirium. Merlin looks down at the triangle of her wake and reads her origins in the waters of the sun. She is coming from the very far distant islands, coming from the harbours of Avalon. The sun-child dances in her 7 masts. Her rainbow wake is a serpent beneath them, with Egyptian figureheads and crystal crystalline decks, she sails in the delta of the flowing through the fixed. The dolphins turn cartwheels in the mirrored stars and moons as they guide this ship to the temple docks under the cone of light on the sacred river. Beams flash out from her crystal cargo as she sails between the oak and willow, between the translucent water palaces. The people bathe in the hot African rains. The wind dries the golden sunlight on their skin. They bathe in the green wells that rise up foaming, to dare the incarnation, to take the road in silence, to know the ascension, to will the resurrection. The song shimmers in the golden people. The moonboat anchors and folds her silver sails. The sun-child dances in the golden masthead. The royal winged sun has made the great return. He was born in the secret beginning of the universe, in the alpha and Maytime of the stars, and returns through an endless chain of islands to the country floating over all horizons, to the headland of the highest world and the city of the golden canals.